It's a little hard to make connections on Zoom as it was when we were live, but we're going to try today to do some little networking things, icebreaker-y things, but with AI technology, and it'll be fun. So, Brad?
Sure. So we can jump in here and start talking. So I just wanted to open this up first with a little discussion of maybe some contemporary news in AI. I'm sure you've been kind of hearing a lot of buzz lately, especially in the AI image generation realm, of AI making some waves and kind of disrupting culture in a number of different areas. So I just wanted to kind of point out some kind of recent articles I've been looking at and kind of talk through those and some kind of the implications of this technology. And from there, maybe focus in on kind of how maybe this is going to affect post-production and production workflows in general beyond just, basic image creation. And then we're going to open it up to a little activity after that using some AI. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Oh, and if I start, looking distorted and cutting out or whatever, I'll have the chat open here. Just make sure I do have that. Yep, over here. And just let me know if I have suddenly pixelated into the ether, just so I can pause for a second before jumping back in. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. And where is that dialog? There we go. And there's a Safari and cool. All right, so you see my browser, correct?
You see a black screen. It says
okay.
Brad Lewter has started screen sharing.
Okay, interesting. It should come up any minute.
Turn your video.
There it is.
It's thinking about it. Okay, cool. So some mundane kind of applications of the technology, but something that's kind of interesting. France has hired, essentially, their tax division has hired a company to develop an app that uses satellite and aerial photography to identify unlicensed swimming pools and various properties, and have already identified 10 million euros plus of missing tax revenue because of unregistered pools. So interesting yet mundane kind of application of this technology, but you could see maybe how that could be, used on data that already exists in mass. So the satellite data, this aerial data that we use all the time, how does AI kind of maybe leverage that to create valuable new information? Another example of the same kind of approach that I heard recently was the discovery of a number of new Mayan ruins within the jungle using AI analyzing aerial photography to pick up patterns that human eyes wouldn't necessarily be able to pick up and discern where these various ruins exist. And they found kind of hundreds from implementing this technology. It's an interesting kind of mundane application of the technology, but something that's going to be affecting a lot of different areas. This becomes a little bit more dystopian when you think about how you could apply this technology to the surveillance state and the security apparatus. And this Clearview AI company is a startup looking to make a database, an AI database that can identify any human being in the world based on the image of their face. They said that they are on track to have 100 billion facial photos in its database this year, and to the point where almost everyone on Earth will be able to be identified through AI technology quickly. Very cool in certain regards. You certainly want to be able to use it when needed, but also a little bit terrifying as to the implications of how this could be used. So now we get to kind of art. And so, certainly, AI is disrupting a number of fields, but particularly what we're interested in here is image generation and image manipulation. And this is, I think, what's making kind of the biggest waves in news lately with the rollout of things like DALL-E and Stable Diffusion to the public. But here's some images from this artist, Sohail Hosseini, creating what he's calling future birds, using AI and then kind of going over the top of AI generated images to refine those further using, digital art manipulation techniques. And of course, making these for NFTs. I mean, obviously, that's what you'd probably do with these. But you can see how this could be used legitimately to make, some interesting, compelling fine art that you wouldn't necessarily come to without using this kind of freeform, interesting artificial intelligence way of combining a number of disparate images into one coherent whole. And then using it as a jumping off point to refine that further into finished, high-res, beautiful, gallery-ready images. So I think there's a lot of cool possibilities there for leveraging these tools to create fine art. I mean, these are pretty beautiful. You can see kind of obvious influences from plant life, aquatic, and birds, but making these kind of new, kind of compelling images. Now, the flip side of kind of AI art, creation is stuff that maybe is a little less savory and maybe a little bit more disruptive to traditional avenues of art. So this made a lot of news recently, where an artist entered AI generated images into the Colorado State Fair, so a large annual art fair, and won first place in the digital category. So any art made with digital tools, this won first place. Now, the artists did not own up to that explicitly in the submission, and I think that's where there's a lot of chafing with the officials and with other artists in the competition, is it was never explicitly stated how this art was created. But essentially, this post kind of cleared it up in that he used Midjourney, which is one of the kind of popular AI image generation systems right now. And that he's been kind of manipulating prompts to create hundreds of images and then curated his kind of top 3, and then essentially just used an AI-based up-resing system called Gigapixel AI to up-res those top 3 choices into print-ready work, which he then printed and submitted. So you can see how this, because it does make quite a compelling image. I mean, I think it's a beautiful, interesting image. But you can see how this would be highly disruptive to any field that uses image to kind of create its product. So if you are working in fine art, if you are working in applied art, I think it doesn't matter. AI is going to be highly disruptive to whatever field you're working in. And especially on the lower end of these things, mass-produced, kind of quickly iterated commercial products, I think are going to be highly disrupted by AI technology. And feel free to also, as I'm kind of talking to, feel free to kind of jump in with comments or questions. So now this has kind of prompted some art communities, not the biggest yet. So not DeviantArt and ArtStation haven't taken an official stance on this yet, but some smaller communities like Newgrounds, Inkblot Art, for Affinity have started implementing policies to explicitly tag or ban altogether AI generated or AI assisted images. Now, this runs into ethical questions of propriety of, is the person submitting the art, in the past, plagiarism would allow a person to essentially just crib off of somebody else's art or image or even present it as their own. But through, intelligent reverse image search, that has been a little bit more difficult to do. With this, you can take massive data sets of hundreds or thousands of images from an artist or artists and combine those meaningfully in a way that is aesthetically pleasing and produces a seemingly original product. but without human hands, really, at least in the initial generation process, though they may be used in up-resing these, refining them, making them more interesting. So while sites are implementing these policies to curb the use of AI, it's really up to the individual user as to whether or not they're going to employ these tools, and whether or not they're going to kind of respect those policies. Because right now it's very hard to track if that is AI generated, especially if it's then been worked over by the artist after it's been initially created. So there's this interesting article specifically pointing to a text by this guy, Brian Romeo, talking about specifically editorial illustration and how AI could disrupt that market, and did a couple tests using some basic AI image generation. So the initial kind of image he's referencing, and then trying to recreate that in AI. So using DALL-E 2 output for a long black chain link fence with barbed wire dollar signs on top against a yellow background. Now, it's not as clean of a design, but you could see how this could certainly pass if somebody was looking for that kind of content, quickly and cheaply. It could certainly pass. Where this, certainly works. It looks a little kludgier, but it still gets the kind of essential idea across. One thing that he notes, however, is that editorial journalists and graphic designers tend to work with kind of wordplay and clever kind of uses of images that can be a little bit difficult for AI currently to reproduce, that wit and that that kind of unexpected kind of creative refinement. Right now, AI doesn't do a great job of being witty, but given time, it's a safe bet to assume that they're going to get more intelligent and be able to do more wordplay and stuff based on human language. Now, this article about kind of the a cascade of kind of ethical implications with these, I thought it had three kind of bullet points that I thought spoke to kind of the crux of the issue here. Especially concerning AI image generation, and in my field, kind of fine art, kind of what that specifically kind of means to me, though it could certainly be extrapolated to other applied art, certainly. So one, is it ethical to train AI on a huge corpus of copyrighted creative work without permission or attribution? And that's what essentially all these are doing, is they're taking publicly available images that may or may not be under copyright, many of them are, to train their AI models to create images. So if they're trained on a bunch of copyrighted artwork and have prompts that allow you to elicit a material that is in line with a certain artist whose work is copyrighted, is that ethical? Is it ethical to allow people to generate new work in the styles of the photographers, illustrators, and designers without compensating them? So right now, there really is no model for compensating artists whose material just happens to be in the AI network or database. And then ultimately, is it then ethical to charge money for that service, as a number of these are doing, where they're starting to monetize the image generation in AI? Is it ethical to charge money for that service, again, built on the work of others? So I think these are all very serious questions that right now, again, I'm speaking specifically to kind of fine artists and freelance kind of image generating artists. But this will begin to affect every kind of field that creates work visually. And so it's something that we really need to kind of understand the ethics and implications of those ethics. The kind of idea too is that, and here's an article, I'm going to post all these links to in the chat so you can look at these. Here's an excellent article about the actual diffusion model that's used in most of these AI systems, like DALL-E 2 that's been referenced, Stable Diffusion, and Midjourney all use diffusion-based models. But essentially, kind of working from a diffuse cloud of pixels and then refining those further and further to kind of match images or combinations of images within that database. But this is a great article that kind of talks through the some of the science kind of behind that in a reasonably accessible kind of layperson's language. And then really kind of scary things. I'm sure many of you saw this recently if you've been looking at any AI news or follow any AI artists on Twitter or Instagram. So this is Loab, which is an AI demon, or people have coined this the first AI cryptid. Has anybody heard the term cryptid before? Like Bigfoot or yeah. So these kind of cultural phenomenons or like kind of mythical creatures that pop up that kind of spread by word of mouth and creepypastas and stuff like this. A lot of people initially thought that this was a creepypasta, that an AI artist was kind of putting people on, saying that this image kept being generated as kind of intentionally. But the artist has kind of laid this out and is sticking to the fact that this is kind of an interesting phenomenon that's occurring with their particular AI and data set they're using. So this artist is named Super Composite, and I suggest you follow them if you can. It's a great account that posts a lot of good AI content. So Super Composite posts, I discovered this woman who I call Loab in April. The AI reproduced her more easily than most celebrities. Her presence is persistent, which is interesting because if it's producing it more easily than celebrities, and celebrities are heavily represented in the data set, why is this image going to keep coming up? Her presence is persistent, and she haunts every image she touches. So this is kind of the idea or story behind it was that she started by creating a negative prompt using Brando and -1. So I want images of Marlon Brando, but the opposite of that. And so it's interesting to think about how AI can say, can interpret, give me the opposite of this set of images. So what it produced was quite interesting. It's kind of a weird, kind of distorted logo and kind of this kind of fanciful, kind of handmade style. But it just says Digita, Penix, and it's kind of what would be the opposite of Marlon Brando. That's interesting. So the network interpreted that as being the opposite of images of Marlon Brando. So then Super Composite wondered, what if I then had used this image reference specifically as a negative prompt for that? So I want the exact opposite of that. Would I get Marlon Brando out of that? And so instead, what the system generated was this. And this is interesting because it kind of shows the diffusion process of how these images kind of add up from these pixel clouds. So once this loads here, this image kind of settles out, and it became very kind of persistent and kind of kept popping up in these images that were created. If you follow the account, you'll see many more of where this has popped up hundreds of iterations away from the prompt and has like re-popped up with the same kind of appearance and stuff like that. Some interesting kind of quirks, ghosts in the machine that are just kind of beginning to be explored. But I thought this was, it made a lot of news in the last few weeks. So I thought that was something quite interesting. And if you follow Super Composite, there's a number of kind of related accounts or whatever, suggested accounts. Just follow those too. We get a lot of really interesting AI content fed to you on Twitter. So now that you've seen some kind of interesting artifacts of the AI world and image generation, now we want to kind of jump in there and start summoning our own AI demons, right? So that'll be kind of interesting stuff to do, fun certainly. So here's some, and again, I'm going to post these in the chat. Let me go ahead and do that now. So as I'm clicking through, you can also click on these if you'd like. So let me just copy that and then paste that over. Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, definite jump scare material, Ryan. Okay, it's going to paste any minute. It's not letting me click on the chat for some reason. Let me close it out real quick and open it back up. Oh, you see my cat here, if you're seeing my screen. This is Cosmo. All right, chats. Yeah, there we go. And Command B. Maybe it's not letting me paste that much. Yeah, Cosmo is great. He is the chillest cat I have ever had. I can pick him up quite easily. That's a little packed together, but I think there's still separate clickable links. Yes, they are. Okay, good. And then let me copy the second half of these as it's popping through here. Oh, is it opening every one of my links? Okay, we're good. All right, I'll post the rest of those as I keep going. All right, so I'm kind of getting started with machine learning. It's an excellent article on kind of the nuts and bolts, kind of basics, and it's kind of an overview of the technology diffusion behind DALL-E and Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. That's definitely worth a look, and some links to some of the most popular ones right now. Those are DALL-E 2 is kind of, and I just got I know some breaking up a little bit, so I just got my invite through on DALL-E 2. It didn't take long. I was some people I was talking with, wait weeks for their invite to come through. Just go to the site and request it. You should get it pretty quickly, but it's an invitation-based system. Stable Diffusion and Midjourney are also quite popular. Stable Diffusion is kind of an exception, as it can be run on your own local machine and can actually have many of kind of the guardrails and stuff taken off of this. So opportunities for kind of nefarious and weird kind of content being created, and that's certainly an issue. As soon as it was kind of released to the public, immediately a number of Twitter accounts associated with it were shut down because of kind of NSFW content being posted off there. Whereas DALL-E 2 and Midjourney kind of have some structural safeguards against producing violent content, sexual content, stuff like that, where Stable Diffusion is a little bit different. Midjourney, you have to use Discord to access that. It's kind of community-based, so it's kind of has a safeguard system that way. We're going to be using Crayon for some of the stuff that we're going to be doing today. And that used to be called DALL-E Mini. And so let me just post that second batch of links here. And let's see, that was cool. So just copy that over. And I tested one of those, and it looked like it was working. So I think even though they're kind of stacked up like that, you can still click them individually, and it should take you to the page. So certainly for jumping in and doing kind of individual kind of image generation on your own for kind of interesting kind of experiments, I highly recommend jumping into any of these. Again, DALL-E 2, the invitation is pretty quick to turn around. So just request that and you should be up and running pretty quickly. The communities are huge around these, so the documentation and support on those is very thorough. Also, a link for the public release of Stable Diffusion. Now, this technology, though it's just kind of now being rolled out to the kind of consumer, kind of wide market, as this machine learning and artificial intelligence has been used in the VFX industry and in post-production now for a few years. So this article of Philippe Sonrier, who heads up McGuff, a VFX studio out of Paris. This is from earlier this year, but just talking about how AI is set to really disrupt the entire industry, where it's going to be used for things that were conventionally maybe very time-consuming or outsourced type processes, are going to be highly kind of refined and rethought through the use of AI and machine learning technologies. So it's already happening. As I'm sure Eric was nodding just a second ago. Eric, are you seeing any of these tools at Fuse yet?
Not these specific tools, but
Yeah.
definitely a lot of AI specific stuff. Like you've probably seen articles about like how they use it in the Star Wars franchise now for like Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett.
Yep.
And I know some other companies that are using it for similar purposes.
Is there anything that any tool you're specifically using at Fuse that you can talk about, obviously?
Well, not Fuse, but it's one of our sister studios, Rising Sun Pictures. I don't know the tool exactly, but it's a very similar tool to like the kind of stuff that ILM does, mostly
Nice.
with like faces.
Yeah. So facial recognition is a big one, especially, traditionally, tracking facial features and modifying and comp or adding VFX to a face. Through machine learning models becomes much easier to track complex features through scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Nuke Copycats is and their whole machine learning kind of platform that they're rolling out is looking to kind of automate a lot of traditionally like very time consuming tasks like roto and just creating mats in general by using what they call copycat, but essentially establishing an input and a ground truth. So the input being the kind of raw footage and the representative frames from that, and then those reference frames being fixed or maybe a mat being drawn around those reference frames or maybe something painted out of one, and then using that to then propagate through the entire sequence that change onto that. So you can imagine how this could vastly kind of speed up workflows and even kind of eliminate jobs too. So like a roto artist, traditionally, you'd be for things that need to be separated from the background, and you didn't have the option to key that otherwise. Or had to be refining a key. You'd have to manually kind of track through that footage and frame by frame make sure that that mat is matching that subject exactly. With things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, that becomes easier to tell a computer to do that with some guidance from human input. And I think that's generally what we're seeing with a lot of these more advanced tools. So with individual kind of AI image generation, whatever goes, certainly. But when it has to be used for a specific purpose in production, there's a human input kind of guiding that process. So the human isn't going anywhere, certainly. It's just the number of humans required to do that thing is getting smaller and smaller, and the expectations on one human are getting larger and larger. Also, if you're using DaVinci Resolve, they have a number of AI tools in their recent version, 1718. Face refinement, which Eric was talking about, kind of using AI tools to kind of track through facial features. Resolve is using face refinement that can kind of track features and make modifications to that. If you need to adjust, the look in the face or add VFX or comp, it becomes much easier with a computer kind of guiding along and tracking those features. Also detecting scene cuts. So going through and intelligently determining exactly, okay, we're going from this shot to another shot and then split that up. Mundane use of AI, but one that would be extremely valuable. You could imagine if you had a piece of footage where all of your cuts were kind of lost or packed together for some reason.
That tool is actually not that new. That's been around with tools for a long time.
For sure. And some of these are like machine learning loosely too. So the technology like Stable Diffusion being relatively new to the image generation process. Some of these processes are operating on much older models, and the field of artificial intelligence has really been around since the 1950s. So the math has been there and has been developing. It's really a lot of it has to do with consumer grade graphics processing hardware that's allowed for consumers to get the kind of computational power they need to kind of run these models too. So the technology kind of evolves together, and things become possible where the math may have existed for quite a while. The hardware suddenly makes that possible to use practically. And Magic Mask, I thought was a pretty cool, seeing demos of this, being able to kind of quickly generate mass and then have machine learning propagate that through frame to frame. So this is certainly being rolled out into kind of every kind of major. So Photoshop, also Adobe has introduced a number of neural filters, all based on machine learning and AI models to, again, automate processes and make things that used to take kind of a long time much more streamlined. And then one more tool that I want to just kind of point out, they're incorporating in their research and development AI and machine learning. But in its current iteration, it's using computer vision, but not AI specifically yet. But something that if you're interested in kind of propagating quickly a stylization onto video, I highly recommend checking this out. It's free, it's very small, and it's pretty straightforward. The documentation is great on it. It's called EB Synth, and basically allows you to input video, or in my case of kind of what I'm using it for is using hardware rendered CG, so really low quality rendered CG, doing stylization over the top of it and using it as a kind of rotoscope system to propagate that style over a number of frames, where I would, in non-photorealistic rendering, have to spend a very long time churning out these frames and adjusting them in comp. So the one that's all the rage on Twitter, that's probably Crayon, and or the three that I talked about. So DALL-E 2, Midjourney, or Stable Diffusion. Nice. So some users of EB Synth. All right, cool. All right, well, we're kind of approaching the end here. Ran a little bit over there. So what I'd like to do is jump out here, and let me just stop my share. Stop share. Come on, Zoom. You can do better than this. Okay, cool. It's going to come back in a second. Awesome. All right. So what I thought we would do is using a simple online AI tool called Crayon, and I'm going to post that into the chat here. So Crayon, spelled with an AI, of course, .com. And I'm going to put it to everyone. That's not a link. Let me make it a real link here. So as I'm bringing this up here, any thoughts on, oh, thank you, Ryan. Excellent. Way ahead of me. Perfect. Any thoughts on AI and maybe where you feel that maybe it's going to affect a job that you're possibly thinking about jumping into and maybe not so sure about anymore? Any maybe some experience? Who here has been using any of these AI tools? Anybody? A little bit, Nick? A little bit, Eric? Cool. And is that mostly, Nick and Eric, is that mostly on production side, or kind of messing with it?
More messing with it. I mess with Midjourney a little bit. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
nice.
do both. The masking, the magic mask or whatever in Resolve, is amazing for making masks of like people, especially for color. And then the facial, like, chain, I don't remember the last facial modification or something, is insane. It's ridiculously good.
So is that so have you used the facial modification tool?
Yeah, we used it a couple times to like remove people's like bags under their eyes or like wrinkles.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can hardly tell that you did anything to it.
Wow, it's incredible.
Yeah,
nice.
It's pretty crazy.
So we have the link here in the chat. Ryan posted it. Thank you, Ryan. Crayon.com. And I'm going to post the first kind of prompt. And the way this is going to work is essentially as if we're kind of given a request by a client, you're up against a deadline, and you have to leverage these AI tools to produce some images or kind of a selection of images for your client as a kind of first round of what you're producing. So kind of concept development phase. And thinking that maybe you take one of these and refine it further into a finished illustration. So for the first prompt, and kind of made these so that maybe they address kind of different areas a little bit. So let's paste that in. All right, so client number 1, we're looking for an illustration of a person being attacked by an alligator. This is for a newspaper article, so we're looking to keep it relatively family friendly. So it's a newspaper article about a person getting attacked by an alligator, and they're looking for an illustration of that to put in the newspaper. All right, so now in generating these prompts for AI, some kind of guidelines, and chime in if you've been playing with AI and you have kind of some of your own tips. But generally what I've found is that the more kind of specific your prompt is, so getting down to describing, you know, the number of people and a large alligator, and adjectives to describe things are great, but being very specific and also about the style. So could be medical illustration or how-to article illustration or something like that. If you describe kind of the style you want to see it in, as much specificity as you can get, usually the better the result and what's output. Now, Crayon is a really kind of kludgy, like low res, you know, quick version of these tools. So you're going to get a lot of really funky, weird stuff, but hopefully that's some of the fun. So what I'd like to do is kind of break out into our breakout groups, hey Cosmo, and we'll address this prompt specifically, try to generate some images. How we decide to vet these in our own group is up to us. And then we come back to the main group with maybe a couple images that we think are kind of the best representative of this, what we would show to the client, like our top 3 choices. All right. So however you approach that, maybe you want to workshop that prompt with everybody in the group, or maybe you want to have individual people kind of go generate their own prompts and bring together images. You decide in your own group. All right. So I think Shane is going to initiate breakout groups. Any questions before we do?
Yeah, so this will send you there automatically for 5 minutes. I just put a test in, and it looks like it takes about 2 minutes to create an image. So I would try to maybe brainstorm really quick and try some stuff so that you're actually working, and then pick someone to talk for your group. So when you come back, we can just quickly share.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. So meet people in your group. The whole point of this is networking.
Say hi, have fun.
Make some new friends.
Cool, cool.
See you soon.
All right, folks. So any volunteers to share some results? Yeah, Caitlin, I saw your hand.
I can rep for my group. Am I able to like share the screen of what I did? Because they kind of got a
yes, please.
Okay, they kind of got a kick out of what I did, because while you were like talking, going through the directions, for some reason my little brain went, okay, what if I just copy paste the whole entire prompt into the thing?
That was a good approach. That's a great approach.
So that's something that I did at first, and like that was something that we discussed, because we actually tried a couple things when we were like going. So this is my initial attempt of just pasting the prompt in. It actually came in with like black and white kind of illustrated images. I think the biggest issue with them is almost all of the alligators don't have heads. I mean, this one has a head, the top middle, and the bottom middle has a head, and I think the left middle row left has a head, but all the other ones don't. The one on the middle right has a weird alligator people and like a weird lump in the background. I think that's the weirdest one out of all of them.
Nice.
But yeah, so that's the first thing that we did. And then from there we tried to like cut it down by like just like doing like the important part, like person being attacked by alligator, family friendly newspaper, stuff like that. And like pretty much for both of these attempts, the newspaper and family friendly weren't there in this
Interesting.
one.
Okay.
It just came back with weird deformed alligators, especially with mouths. That was the most
double head
biggest-
alligator. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Well, so it looks like the first just plugging the prompt directly in. So
yeah.
verbatim from the client made the best results. It's definitely like the most like newspaper illustrations of a person being attacked. Yeah.
The only thing I got rid of was client number 1. That's the only thing I got rid of from the prompt. So, but yeah.
Nice. Excellent. All right. Another group. Sam?
Yeah. So I think we didn't just copy paste what you said. We tried to come up with like our own stuff, like man running away from an alligator by the water.
Good approach. Yeah.
This is what we got.
It's pretty good.
Especially this one with the head. It's kind of like funny.
But as a basis for something, it certainly work. Yeah.
Yeah, we were wondering if we would like go with like no gender on it, how would be look like? And one of my group mates did like a person running away, and then the alligator comes with just a foot on a picture, which was interesting.
Weird.
That person looks like a hot dog to me.
Yeah, but so this is pretty successful. An interesting, different kind of approach is just thinking about exactly what you wanted to see in the image and then being specific about that and how that then fulfills the prompt. So I think this is pretty successful, especially for trying to generate something that looks like a photograph of a person being attacked by an alligator. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, and then do we have one more group?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen for real quick.
Thanks, Peter.
Here we go. I got like we got lots of more like hand drawn style of this one, because like I just typed in alligator attacking a guy because I felt like I have to be sort of specific. That way you could like draw an alligator attack some kind of children that wouldn't be like family friendly or something else like that. So I just did that. And clearly we got this guy is all eaten.
He's all eaten. And little baby alligator joined in too. That's good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, nice.
We also got like the blood sensor, it's all green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've seen interesting, and it's really interesting that it decided to just default to this illustrative style when you just said alligator attacking a guy. Like, why would it decide to make it in an illustration? Kind of interesting. I've seen kind of interesting, like one of those common ones, you're seeing a ton of these posted on social media of like Steve Harvey trail cam footage or Guy Fieri trail cam footage. And it really does look like them on trail cam footage. So the key there is like, there are tons of images of trail cam footage and tons of images of these celebrities. So the AI has a pretty good idea as to how those would combine. So I've seen some good stuff with like illustration stuff where it's like, you just add like WikiHow illustration or something like that. You think about the style of illustration you want and append that. Something that would be heavily represented in the database. Cool. Well, 3 very different kind of results from these, all quite interesting. Great job. So it looks like we're out of time here, but I'll just pop one more prompt in the chat in case you just want to kind of do this on your own. And it was another kind of Florida themed one, so I thought I'd post that in there. Repping the Sunshine State with all of its flaws. That's where I am from. So let me drop that in the chat. And so the second prompt, should you choose to do it, we need a painting for the cover of a sci-fi novel about super intelligent manatees. So it's a little bit more interpretive as to how you would approach that. But the style they're looking for specifically, so if you think about the way that sci-fi book illustrations kind of look. You can maybe narrow that down to specific artists like Boris Vallejo or something like that. So, intelligently thinking about, what you're leveraging in that database to then generate the images is a good kind of way to approach this. So think about, what words are going to trigger that database to kind of produce what you want. But a lot of it does kind of come up kind of ephemerally and at a chance. It's kind of fun that way, certainly. So, if you guys want to stick around and jump back into groups, do one more, you certainly can. Or we can call it a night, depending. I don't know, Shana, what do you think?
I think if the other 3 groups want to share their image, if it's different, they can do that. And then.
Oh, wait, we had 6 groups?
Yeah.
Whoa, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought we had 3 groups. I was, out of bounds there. So let's see the other 3 groups certainly before we go, because I definitely want to see those. Sorry about that, guys. Any, Nick, are you throwing your thumb up or are you volunteering?
Oh, I was saying all good. I'm
So,
not volunteering myself, no.
Okay. Any other volunteers from the other 3 groups? All right, Gabriella.
I don't know if I could share my screen. I was having a hard time doing that. Wait, let me see if I can. No, okay, wait. Can I just put it down as a file?
Yeah, you should be able to drop that in the chat.
Okay, cool.
Take a look at it.
Okay, so here it is. I basically just typed in like one person, a large alligator, in a lake cartoon. I mean, the middle photo is not bad. Like I have a person actually in it, but the alligator looks really bad. But at least I got one person. I mean, the other ones kind of just look like random drawings of alligators. They're not bad. Kind of like dinosaurs.
What was the prompt you used for that again?
Oh, it was one person and a large alligator in a lake cartoon.
Oh, okay, cool. So definitely picked up the large alligator part and lake and cartoon. So it definitely, but then, so the term person, it's like, why do you leave that out of most of these images? Kind of interesting.
I think it's probably blended in. Like you can see some elements of like somewhat of a figure, but not as defined as that middle one. So and
just for general knowledge here, the results you'll get from something like Midjourney or DALL-E 2, the big brother of this, or Stable Diffusion are going to be much higher fidelity than this, but this is kind of quick and fun. Cool, nice job. And I love how different the styles it's producing are. Somebody from one of the other groups want to volunteer an image?
I will be down in a bit.
Okay.
Actually, okay, so I started the new search by accident, so I'm just gonna show what we had before.
Okay.
So before we had like keywords like, because I thought it was like supposed to be like a cinematic alligator attack. The hard part was when I was talking to, I believe, Fan, Max, and I don't want to forget Monica. It was, I don't want to forget anyone's names, and I want to be respectful of also my group members because they were helping me out with like finding words to make sure that I was with a child. We kept on getting photos like these where we got the attack,
that's
but
awesome.
We didn't get like, it was hard to get the child part. And one of the searches we got, which we didn't get to like talk about because the time ran out, it actually had the kids reading like a student newspaper. It was like kids were like very creepy, but like the kids were reading a student newspaper and it looked like an alligator was on top of the paper, really distorted and stuff. So getting the alligator is easy. Getting the attack is easy. It's getting, it's making it child friendly and making it.
That's not child friendly. The
how
last.
do you make alligators child friendly? I think they have like a.
That's the trick.
I think they have like a movie on Netflix about like an alligator, but I don't know.
Well, I think it's the being specific maybe about the style that we're seeing it in. So it's interpreting school newspaper in kind of a weird way. It sounds like cool. Some of those like the closed circuit security cam look kind of convincing alligator attack photos. Some of those are kind of disturbing. Cool. All right, and last group. Any volunteers there? Awesome, Lauren.
Yeah. So we got a couple of different results. We weren't really finding stuff that seemed like it worked. When we first did alligator newspaper, the thing that I got was an alligator like on top of a newspaper. Just like reading it. I can try and share this part.
Oh,
So we got this.
the worldly alligator.
This is the worldly alligator. And then for once Jack suggested using the word cartoon to try and get it. And so we just got these like very like childish drawing. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. This one.
No.
Very like childish drawings. I think it tried to combine man and alligator at the same time.
Totally.
So this alligator has pants.
I love it.
But yeah, so those were kind of the ones that we ended up getting.
He's sophisticated to read, so he needs pants too.
Exactly. It's a progression of evolution. You know, he's leaving the pond, joining society.
Yeah, next year
He
they're gonna
attacked
start
the
a
man and
society.
became one.
The alligators become the man. I love it. Yeah, and articles about Florida man, you know, I have a special place in my heart for those. Cool. Well, some really interesting results here, and I hope I have maybe spurred an interest in kind of jumping into some of these tools and making some absurd images. Maybe some really creepy, scary stuff is fun too. But the unexpected results, I think, are quite fun with this stuff. But while kind of, you know, appreciating maybe some of the scary dystopian ethical issues around these things as well. Also, you know, think about how these are going to be leveraged in your work, and it always helps to be ahead of the curve. So, you know, keep looking for that AI news related to whatever you're doing in production or post-production, because it's entering everywhere.